We apologize, but they had their microphone turned off. So education, teaching is one of these topics. And I think it was brought to light when we had our dialogue, our conversation with Carlos Moya around Ferrer y Guardia. We discussed some of the expressions that you can find in the book we are talking about today. This is a kind of a continuation of how the mindset of Octavio Paz school here in Barcelona. It was a very interesting conversation. Tomorrow, we will have another session discussing inclusive education. This is one of the outstanding topics, a very important one, that helps us understand inequality in the classroom. There are students who might have some difficulties, but they have other skills that can be strengthened and supported. If we empower them with the skills that they actually require, they will make a difference and they will be more free. So this connects with the exhibition that is now going on in the room next door. And that is part of the conversations that we're having, that we had yesterday and the ones that we have today. So today the focus is on a method, a methodology, a teaching methodology that has many followers and supporters worldwide, that takes into consideration the great personality of Maria Montessori. Our starting point is going to be this book published by Presenta, The School of Life. It was published not even a year ago. It has been written by Laura Baldini, which is the nickname of Beate Maly. She tells about the life of Maria Montessori, a woman who wanted to change things and really make a difference, like John Dewey and Ferrer Guardia, that are just, couple of names that were mentioned in our previous conversations. Well, in this methodology, the child is put at the center so that the child, or so that educators, teachers help the child grow. Maria Montessori believed that children were the hope for humanity, for humankind. And if they were trained with the necessary skills, they would be better suited in the future for the future, actually. We're going to have this conversation with Juliá Barnadas. She's the president of the Spanish Association Maria Montessori. She's the director, the principal of the School Maria Montessori in Girona. So the main goal of these conversations is to have the author of the book, so that we can discuss the literature on the one hand, and then on the other hand, to have an expert. This is an ever-changing area. So she, Ms. Barnadas, is going to help us better understand the Montessori model. And of course, you cannot see her. She's not here on stage, but you can hear her, and she's with us virtually. Beate Maly. She's listening, she's hearing us actually, she's listening to us, and she's following the conversation from her home in Vienna. She will engage with you as well. If you have any questions, if you have any comments or observation or remarks, just do as if you were in a classroom, raise your hand. We're going to give the floor to you, and you will be able to pose your questions, also your questions for Beate. Hi, hello, how are you, Beate?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you. And greetings to Barcelona, hi.
We would have very much liked to have her with us on stage so that she could participate in this conversation face-to-face, but you know, the COVID pandemic still well, forces us to do it otherwise. Here on stage we keep social distance, so that's why we are not wearing face masks. So Beate, now connecting literature with teaching, so what's the aspect that really struck you, that really fascinated you about Maria Montessori, so that you ended up writing a novel about her?
I have to say, Maria accompanied me for many, many years. Yeah, so I'm a Montessori teacher myself, and my 3 children, they went to Montessori kindergarten and to Montessori schools. So I'm really fascinated by Maria Montessori. And when people asked and was looking for an author for this novel about Maria Montessori, I enthusiastically said, yes, I want to write it, please. So, and it was for me an opportunity to, well, to have another look at this fascinating woman. So not on her method, but on the woman behind the pedagogy. Sorry.
We're going to talk about Maria as a woman, because she already was a reference back then. She was really engaged in the fight for the rights of women. So she was quite a feminist herself. But okay, so Bologna, March 1902, Maria Montessori has been living in a cloister, isolated in a cell for some weeks, and a friend of her, Anna, visits her and she confesses. Now he's going to read the book. So he's now explaining this story where Anna visits Maria in the cloister. Maria said she wants to study many things, pedagogy, and that some children might be able to pursue further studies if they had a proper education. Maria explains that she wants to develop a methodology herself so that children are treated with respect. And children will be treated with respect, love, and tenderness. She wanted to create places where, well, full of joy. So Maria asks her friend, "What do you think?" And her friend thinks it's a great plan. They hug because they were happy to see each other again. So Anna was quite sad to leave her in that cell. So it was time to put all these ideas into practice. So this excerpt that I've just read, which is quite, well, you can find it right at the end of the book, actually defines how she becomes the first doctoressa in Italy. And that's the starting point, actually. That's when she decides that she wants to create a methodology where, you know, you need to feed and nurture the child's interest. So Beate, Anna, do you think that we are able to nurture a child's curiosity? Well, absolutely. One of the ingredients to promote interest is, you know, to appeal to a child's curiosity. But the Montessori methodology is not about making the child curious, but to make aside anything that might distract the child, to remove the noise, so to speak. Montessori studied medicine. She observed children for a very long time, and she worked with children for many, many years. She learned that even if they had special needs or had certain difficulties, neurological issues, for example, or if they came from rather disadvantaged backgrounds with a low degree of education, she would treat them, all of them, equally. She would speak of the universal child, and she believes that all of them have a curiosity in them. They have specific human trends that come by definition, unless these interests, these trends are mitigated by other effects in the environment. What do you think, Beate?
I think that every child wants to learn and to understand the environment in which we are living. And it's the task of the educators to maintain this joy of learning. So I think that anxiety and that examinations are not helpful to keep this joy of learning in progress. So if a child gets bad grades or bad marks, so I don't think that this child is to be blamed that it's not that it is lazy or that it is not intelligent enough. We have to ask the question, what did the teacher do in order to keep the curiosity and the joy of learning to keep it in the child and to grow it. So I hope it makes sense. My English is not so fine. So
well, I think we really get the message. Don't worry about it, Beate.
Okay. So what I want to say is that bad marks, I don't think that the child has to be blamed, but the teacher. So this is the main message.
Of course. I think this is one of the features of Maria Montessori, and this is something you explain in the book. So the child, the pupil, is put at the center. But it's not just up to him or her. It's not just up to the child. The child needs to observe, and the teacher actually needs to see and observe the spirit, the soul of that child who really wants to grow and to learn, not only physically speaking, I mean, to grow also emotionally, mentally, and to have the experiences that will help the child navigate later on in this world. So when Maria meets Anna in this book, and she shares with her the idea of actually putting together a new teaching system, we said earlier that Maria Montessori became the first female doctor in Italy. And this was very difficult for her, actually, as you explain in the book. She did so in a time where she had all the odds against. And it was very difficult for her not only to become a female doctor, but also to bring forward her methodology. And I think this actually links very well with inclusive pedagogy, to give the opportunity to all children to grow. So I think commitment and feminism are topics that come up very often in this book, and they're also one of the boosters of the Montessori methodology, right, Beate?
she was a feminist long before she was a teacher. She went to the International Women Congress in Berlin, and there she demanded the equal payment for women and for men, which was revolutionary, and which we still don't have. Yeah, so in Austria, still men earn a lot more than women do, and women in danger of old age poverty. Yeah, a lot more often than men are. So she was really ahead of her time, and she was a feminist, of course. And she fought for the rights, for women's rights.
Anna, so feminism that starts with her, I think that it also expands to her teaching methodology. Yes, of course, besides what Beate just said, which is quite obvious, and I think it's crystal clear, she actually vindicated an equal pay or wage for men and women, which is something that we haven't overcome entirely today. So the methodology, the teaching methodology, the classroom, any movement, any element, so the activity itself, everything in the classroom is completely equal for boys, girls, for those with greater skills, for those with lesser skills. So that's right, Beate. And, you know, 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds boys actually iron or take care of the plants. All of them tidy the classroom. So I think this is, you know, something that's really rooted in the methodology, equality among all of them. So in a Montessori environment, anything that has to do with inequality and differences among children is an external influence. Boys and girls, when they come to the classroom, even if they come from a rather disadvantaged context, they behave in a completely equal manner. And we've seen that very often. We've seen that in, children do not marginalize other children. This is something that they learn from the grown-ups. So this fight for gender equality is actually a reality in the classroom. I broached this topic because when reading the book, you see how this knowledge is created, a knowledge that later serves Maria Montessori to put together her methodology right at the end of the novel. So she's actually following a path, starting as a doctor from, her medical background, following as a feminist, fighting for equality for women, the ones experiencing trouble or inequality. And I would like to quote 3 examples that can be found in the book. As a little situation that she has with a librarian, and then a conversation she has with 2 friends. She's now going to read. So first, this conversation with a librarian. So she asked a book about pedagogy, and the librarian, a male librarian, asks her back, why is she interested in that since she's a doctor? So Maria insists on the librarian bringing her the books. And he says, well, it's going to take me a while. So as we can see, Maria encounters difficulties to get specific books, not only because she has a medical background, but because the male is reluctant to give that woman those books, that kind of knowledge. Well, he reads again. So women in London are fighting for a universal right to vote. And a male librarian is actually questioning the choice of books made by a female doctor. And then a conversation with a friend of Maria on male and female equality concerning knowledge. The friend is Anna. I think that your colleague Montesano, a character that you will get familiar with later, is also interested in culture, and he wants to go up the scale in his career. He was an exemplary student. The only danger I see is that he might feel threatened by you. So Maria is a bit surprised by that. So Maria struggles to follow the logic of this conversation. Ambitious men actually do not stand the idea that women are more successful than them. If your name is more, if you are more famous than him, well, you're gonna be in trouble. And Maria laughs. And now he's going to go to a third example. He's going to read another conversation with her friend Renilde. They discuss some hard topics and professional topics. To have a professional relationship with someone is one thing, but to have a date, to go on a date with that person is a completely different thing. So Maria says, well, what happens if I go on a date with Dr. Montesano? Well, Maria, you completed a very successful career being single. Think of all the problems, all the hurdles that you had to overcome. You had to fight to get, to achieve your goals. You've been very persistent, and now you have, all possibilities open to you. I don't want a man to stand in your way. And Maria responds, well, I'm not willing to give up anything for a man. Maria, in this world, when you get engaged with a man, you stop feeling safe. Women are the ones staying at home with the children. So Renilde is the mom. So that's the reality Signorina Montessori had to fight against so that her dreams could come true. And I think Beate explains this very well. Beate, do you want to add something?
No, I think everything is said to that. She was not allowed to work and to have her child. She was not allowed to bring up her child alone because the society was convinced that when a woman is married, then she only has to be there for her family and can't do anything else besides that.
Anna, well, let me say that one of the things that are revealed by that reveal the commitment to equality, men and women, is that Maria works for the dignity of children. So she believes that children, boys and girls, don't have to prove anything. So dignity is something that belongs to a boy and a girl. So she starts with the human being. It's not a discrimination that comes with an intention. So equality starting with dignity. And through her methodology, she empowers boys and girls. So a boy, while following her methodology, a boy is not going to feel threatened by a girl who runs faster than him. And this brings me to the idea of the story you just read, right? Yes, from the very beginning, from the root. Henriette Goldschmidt, when they meet at a conference, they discuss how children can be brought up since, well, from kindergarten with equal values. Co-education, class co-education, and gender co-education. These are two of the ideas defended by Montessori, by Ferrer-Guardia, by Dewey. Yes, I think they overlap. These methodologies put the child at the center. They teach children in a free environment. They do not punish children. They are not based on memory learning techniques. They propose hands-on activities like Ferrer-Guardia here or John Dewey in the US. Maria Montessori went to the US, visited the US several times when she was developing her ideas. So I don't know what Beate has to say about this, but for me, the main difference of Maria Montessori's legacy, consisting of a methodology that wants to work systematically on Montessori's methodology, is that, well, Maria Montessori studied mathematics, physics, and natural science. So she becomes a pedagogue right at the end of her career. She has the commitment, she understands that being a pedagogue is not just about saying, well, children want to or can do whatever they feel like to do. No, she was a scientist, so she worked on an evolution model following different growing or evolution stages, developmental stages. She studied psychological features to each stage, and then she considered also the learning environment. So she defined how from 0 to 6 years old had to be, from 6 to 12 years old. She also focused on how a child in early education has to learn, because nowadays we have quite our kindergarten groups are there are quite a few students per class. So she believed that learning environments are different for little children than children 6 to 12 years old, for example. And then these pedagogues also consider teachers as guides. That's the word used by Maria Montessori, guide. And the guide prepares different kinds of interventions depending on the learning stage of each child. So she developed her methodology based on observation, on scientific evidence, and on putting in writing absolutely everything, how a teacher has to evolve to turn into a guide. We talk quite a lot about customizing education. Well, one of the Montessori methodology, one of the keys of Montessori methodology is to make the child independent. It's not about having smaller groups. It's about making them more independent so that the guide can better follow their interests. It's not just about, having the children around, moving freely and doing whatever they feel like. No, it's about creating the environment to give them a wide range of knowledge. So picking up on this, Maria, in her shoes as a doctor, she realizes that medicine required by society is a good education that starts from these grounds, that children have good guidance through their education.
So, sorry, you want me to say something to this point? Okay. Well, I have to explain something. I wrote the novel. I wanted to tell the story about Maria when she was not the teacher. Yeah, I wanted to tell and to explain how it came that she becomes a teacher. So I'm not so fixed at the method. Yeah. So, Anna is great. She's explaining everything. So what I was interested in was what was it that she decided to give up her medicine and just to work with children? This is what I wanted to tell in my story, and this is the reason why I end the story when she when she decides to become a teacher. So and I'm not an expert in co-education. I'm really sorry.
And that's why Anna is here, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't worry. We are interested in the journey the doctoressa embarks on before turning into the Maria Montessori that is known to us in the pedagogue, in this feminist woman that supports the idea of children being the ones able to change the world, a world that she doesn't like because it's a world defined by war. So a world that wants actually to put an end to education. And well, we discussed this already about Ferrer Guardia and why were schools, Montessori schools, or there were people wanted to shut down Montessori schools in Italy. Why was that? Because they were actually educating free thinkers, and that's why in this dialogue we're interested to make the link with literature and expertise. So Montessori is a female doctor who realizes that the only cure to the evil of the world is thinking. We are still living in a pandemic situation, so the virus that we have to fight against is ignorance. And we want to explore different disciplines. Well, she wanted for children to explore different disciplines so that children would have, you know, the full knowledge. And I think this actually collides with what is happening nowadays. We go from right to left and left to right. We say teacher is the one actually teaching a lesson. Then we say the teacher is actually accompanying the child. We want dynamic techniques, not teaching techniques, then learning by projects, then guided discovery, let the children be. So we've seen a lot of content, important content, maths, science, etc., that is now not being taught. In our country, content or, you know, education is quite demanding. But university teaching studies actually are, you know, a completely different study. Montessori actually feels with knowledge coming from all kinds of disciplines this content. She doesn't want a teacher, you know, to teach a lesson. A plan is like this, etc., etc. No, she wants to prepare a teacher so that a teacher is able to accompany the child. So it is very important that a teacher is a wise person and has a lot of knowledge, but not to teach children, but to accompany them. I think this is something that we can actually see in the book when Maria gets acquainted with Luigi's story and the tragedy of his story. Beate, do you think this is a representation of all the children who became more independent and more free thanks to Maria Montessori through the role of Luigi that comes up in your book?
Luigi is representative for the disabled children Maria worked with. So I wanted to tell that that she was convinced that disabled children also need support and also have the right of education. And this is what I wanted to tell with Luigi. And I just took one, yes, as a representative for all. So because it's a novel, yeah. So the first thing I want to do is I want to entertain my readers and and I want to tell the great story of Maria Montessori, and this was one way to show how she worked with children with disabilities.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think this brings us back to a more in-depth analysis in her methodology. We are now analyzing this methodology with the help of your book and the help of Anna as an expert here. And tomorrow we're going to talk about tackling diversity in school. However, today we are focusing on Maria Montessori, the School of Life by Laura Baldini, Beate Maly. So I would like to continue the discussion about the tools, the methods, the principles that are still valid today. All of this started in 1902 in a cloister cell when Maria shares with her friend that she wants to take up pedagogy so that she promotes a more free education. So this is actually the foundations of the Montessori's teaching schools and institutions worldwide. But have you seen an evolution? So Beate ends her book here, but I think we can actually pick up the testimonials of generations that have learned under the Montessori methodology. So nowadays there's a big explosion of, well, back in the, by the time the book happens, well, we see kind of an explosion of the Montessori methodology because there were many wars going on in the world. There were dictators, Mussolini, among others, and there were about 15 Montessori schools here in Catalonia, Escola del Mar and others. Then there's a kind of backdrop. And however, in the United States, it's a completely different story, and the number of Montessori schools doesn't stop to grow. So the number of Montessori schools grows year by year. And I think about 10 to 15 years ago, there was again quite a movement in support of Montessori schools. You know, we see a situation where school systems are failing in many countries and people are thinking about it. We see many changes in legislation. We see changes concerning the theories, the teaching theories, and solutions are required. So in this context, Montessori methodology comes back in Europe. Also in the US, but as I said, the interest in Montessori had been continuously growing in the US. And so there's a kind of a rediscovery of Montessori methodology and her scientific methods. Also, the study of child brain confirms the certainty and the validity of Montessori's theories. And we see countries where, you know, wealthy countries, poorer countries, more advantaged countries, less advantaged countries being interested in Montessori. Maria Montessori says that Montessori guides need to stick to the scientific methodology to observe. So Maria Montessori's legacy, when she creates the International Association, does not disappear. Renilde Montessori, who's her granddaughter, continues with her work, and the International Association is actually the most important one. There are other Montessori associations, but the International Association has a scientific committee that continuously reviews the scientific grounds. And, you know, we hear these teachers saying, well, I'm a Montessori teacher and I think I've just come up with a new activity. No, well, there's no room for new things in that methodology. Everything has been bulletproofed. So from British Columbia to Harvard to many other places, there are a lot of scientific research groups who are actually doing research on the scientific grounds, supporting this methodology. We've seen articles being published in a science journal that compare the level of development of executive functions and the things that define us as human beings, you know, the ability to control ourselves, etc. So there's a lot of research going on in this domain so that we can better understand children with special needs. Some children need more sensory stimulation, others fewer, others less. So we are seeing a kind of a constant follow-up on this methodology by doctors, by practitioners, etc. This is something that Maria Montessori already anticipated. She saw a classroom as a learning environment where the guide, the teacher, does not cease to observe. And we see, as I said, a lot of research going on. And sometimes we are not critical enough. Yes, we actually fall into the trap of other theories when we see that there are bulletproof methodologies, emotional theory, for example, emotional teaching, which became quite a thing. But we do not listen, or well, it's not a thing anymore. Education needs to absorb all of this, and Montessori methodology already includes emotions. So the main goal is not for children to learn maths, for example. The main goal here is a human being that grows, who grows and evolves. So it's not about, you know, we have a math class and then we have an emotions class. No, we need to bring all these things together, to combine them. Well, you know, in the book, there's a moment where she actually thinks or reflects on the grounds, the foundations of the Montessori methodology. She wants children to decide for themselves what they are really interested in. John Dewey is actually one of the persons who put the role of the teacher, the guide, at the center. A person who allows children to learn by themselves. Do you think that more synergies are required, or greater contact among the public administration, private actors, schools, so that practitioners, people actually performing this methodology, can do it properly? Well, I think this brings me back to something that I've already mentioned. Our teachers, our practitioners need to be better educated. They need more in-depth knowledge in psychology, in Montessori methodology from 0 to 3. Well, she actually includes a lot of medical information. So teachers need to be trained not only in pedagogical resources and materials, but also the contents. And then on the other hand, when we say that education needs to be customized, well, teachers need resources, and one of the resources is time. You know, syllabus or schedules are very weird, look very weird to me. You need to prepare for a whole academic year, for a whole school year in, you know, the first 2 weeks of September. So it's a very intense work. And I think there are some holiday or resting periods that are not well distributed during the year. And of course, we need to customize our classrooms. Classrooms must be spacious. They must allow for children to be free to discover for themselves. It must be a comfortable environment with materials or glass and wooden materials. So from the very moment the child steps into the classroom and lives it, it's an educational experience. And for example, the children might spend like 3 hours in that classroom, but they learn at their own path. And the main, the main source of education of any children is their parents, their families. Society must get involved in children's education so that we as a tribe convey the right message, the message that we are committed to with the defense of human dignity and basic human rights. It is not acceptable that we see and read by the media a message stating that, yes, we are feminists because today we celebrate Women's International Day, but I'm conveying the completely opposite message the day after that. So then it's up to the school, up to the families to say, look, this advertisement is not right. But children are like sponges, so we need actually to go into action.
So everyone has to go along the same lines, and also along the lines of what Beate was saying before. We were talking about literature and education, and we are talking about the Montessori method. And she was saying, I'm not an expert on the Montessori method, but I was, in love with the story behind the woman and her struggle to pursue her own dream. And her story becoming the first doctor with so many obstacles, and all these things are on the basis of what Anna is saying. Beate, you in the novel, and that's something that I wanted to ask you, we have spoken about Henriette Goldsmith. She founded the General Association of German Women that appears also in the novel. Would you say that she was a very important reference for Maria Montessori? I mean, the fact that they met was key in order to start this engine towards pedagogy?
I think it was one of the puzzle, it was one of the pieces, yeah, that perhaps influenced her, yeah. But there were a lot of different pieces that were then put together to a whole picture. So yes, I think she influenced her perhaps, but as many other people as well.
I was saying that because at a certain point in the novel, there is a congress, and Maria is taking part in this congress, and she meets Dr. Goldsmith, and she explains to one of her friends who she is, and she says something like, she's Dr. Goldsmith, the one that gave that conference, which was so interesting. And she's part of the Women Association, German Association of Women. And she keeps on explaining, and he keeps on reading. He keeps on saying, we have heard many nice things about you. You will be this first one to speak. And I'm sure that this will help us to keep on
So She says that she's all expecting or waiting for her discourse at the conference. Nowadays, we have a little information about children in kindergarten. Nowadays, I'm working with children with disabilities in a clinical facility in Rome. And Maria says that she's reading everything about Sagan and guitar. So 2 pieces in this complex context. I try to stimulate children, and great progress has been made. It hasn't been easy at all, however. Henry Goldsmith says, well, I'm not surprised at all. I'm sure you are familiar with the presence that the disciple of Pestalozzi actually, he wanted for little children to develop from very early on. And he talked about this presence or gifts. How do you call those places? Kindergartens, a place where you expect children to grow up like plants with no unnecessary efforts and unnecessary discipline so that they can adapt to their own path. Unfortunately, these ideas did not fit with Prussian ideals. Well, this sounds like a very tough job, says Maria. Well, it takes a lot of time and effort, but you know, to win a battle, you need to be persistent. Think of our hard fight for the rights of women. It will take us years until everyone understands that women must take part in spiritual and scientific life. Maria was really fascinated by that woman who actually pursued her ideals, and she wanted to become like Dr. Goldschmidt one day and to become an old lady like her. I think that in this excerpt you find many cues and many information about how the personality of Maria Montessori defines her personality as a pedagogue, as Beate describes in the book. Children grow up like plants in the garden. So they need a little guidance, a little support, but they grow up by themselves. Is that right so, Beate? I see Anna nodding, yeah.
For me, really, really interesting was Maria had made this really difficult decision, and she gave her son to different parents. To what is the word in English when someone else is growing up your children? You know, I don't have the word now in English, but you know what I mean. So this really, really difficult decision, and she was only allowed to watch her and to watch her son and to see what he needs, but she wasn't able to interfere, and this is something which is when I get it right, the method. Anna say something against me if I'm wrong, but the teachers in the method, they should observe the children really carefully and really carefully watch what they do, and then they should prepare the environment in a way that the children can take the materials and can work with them. So and with the background that when we now see that she was only allowed to watch and observe her own child, this brings a new view, I think, into this method, which was really, really interesting for me. Yeah, so perhaps I'm completely wrong.
So I presume that she wants to find right tools to help her own child, and then the rest of the children too. I don't know whether you want to say something else.
Yeah.
Maybe I would like to pinpoint the materials that we were mentioning, because of course she read a lot. The books that her friend brought her, and Dr. Guittard. And these materials, these books, are books for neurological development. And I think that's the key, because they were thought for children that needed to be awakened somehow to, you know, to work with their brain, because we can talk about children from the age of 3 to 6 or other children with some difficulties. They had to be really stimulated, and these materials were not there in order to learn shapes or things. They were development materials, so they were concretions of abstract concepts. That's what she put in this learning procedure, because the children is not learning cylinders or cubes or whatever. He is integrating volume and height and measures, so abstractions. And I think that's the greatness. She's not inventing everything. She's not designing everything, but being a scientist herself, she documents what she does. And according to her son, of course, Beate is the specialist in biography, but I think that Maria Montessori wanted for her child to be, you know, in the free air without any kind of particular pressure about results and exams and so on and so forth, but for the child to grow free. And sometimes it's better to not to intervene that much, because otherwise you are manipulating and limiting. And many children in our classrooms, you know, they are bored and they are limited. And of course, we do not need to just take away all the content, but we need to make sure that the contents are present in a way that makes it interesting for the child to discover. And I think that Maria Montessori had to sacrifice certain things, but she had a mission in her life, and the mission was to create all this material. It's not that she was a professor because she wanted to be a professor, but she wanted to, you know, transform everything that she had learned in the clinic and transform this in a will to keep on learning, because she talks about the vital needs that we all have, we all human have as an engine for anything that we do. And we cannot go against nature. If a child does not want to learn to read, we cannot force. Maybe you know, before reading he needs to take care of plants, and then afterwards he will really want to know about plants and read about them. Well, you know, I'm a writer. And sometimes I say, well, and if the child does not want to read, I mean, never mind. But he or she will read sometime. But yes, but I'm meaning the love for reading. Of course, I think that we can live so many lives thanks to reading. Yes, but Maria Montessori said, let's not throw the baby with the water of the bath. And I think that things need to be done when you are ready. And if it's not in one particular way, it can be done in another particular way. And I think that all teachers know that there is a nature that needs to help, but somehow, sometimes you don't have the knowledge or the materials or the environment or the time. But Beate, you are a teacher in kindergarten, sorry.
No,
and,
I was for the last 20 years. I'm working as
okay, so then I just leave my question aside because I was imagining, you know, a kind of feature film in my head, and I was imagining the kindergarten as you were writing the novel and applying the future concepts of the method with the children that you had in the kindergarten. So I keep the message that we were mentioning at the beginning and that you also mentioned in the novel, this idea expressed by Maria Montessori in the Madonna de San Luca, in that convent, because she thinks that time has come to incentivize children, because all the children want to learn. And I think that's the main engine for anyone who really works in the field of teaching, giving the formula, giving trust, being engaged with love, so that the girl or the boy can find his or her own way, own pathway, and move on, notwithstanding the sex or way of thinking. And I think that Maria worked for that in particular. Beate, do you agree?
Yes, of course. I agree, yeah.
I think that her legacy is her engagement, because she wanted to teach or to train teachers with this method. And she starts in courses with more than 100 students. And soon after, here in Barcelona, there is a lot of motivation for education. And it's not only a question of her creating a method with her child, but she thinks about the teacher, and she knew that the mission she had was huge, because we are talking about the Montessori guide. I wonder whether the audience wants to ask now any question. As I was saying at the beginning, if you want to intervene at any point, the mic is at your disposal. Beate is listening to you. Anna is also here to answer. It's not my case, because I mean, poor me, I know as much as Montessori method as you do, probably, or even less. But if you have any doubt, any suggestion, any contribution, you can go ahead. Otherwise, I just want to say goodbye to Beate and to Anna, because it has been a real pleasure to have this conversation with them. And this conversation will be recorded and we can recover it afterwards. So I think that it has been great to discover a little bit this incredible world of Maria Montessori with this book, The School of Life by Laura Baldini. Where does this nickname come from, Beate, by the way?
I'm writing for 5 different publishers in German. I'm Austrian, but I'm writing for German publishers. And when people asked me for a new novel, the other one said yes, but please with another name. So this is it. They don't want to share their authors, and then they searched for a Italian nickname.
Okay, with this Italian touch. Okay, so thank you very much to the Signorina Laura Baldini. That is Beate Maly for being here with us from Vienna. Thank you for this novel. Thank you for all this background existing in this novel that allows us to understand much better and to get to know much better the life of Maria Montessori. And thank you for allowing us to talk about this method, which is so popular all over the world, and that allows us to have free children. Thank you, Beate. Thank you, Anna. Thank you to you all.
Bye.
I advise the book to you all, of course. Thank you, and tomorrow starting at 6 o'clock. We start with the third session of this set of conversations. Thank you to you all for being here.